Today's wish comes from Amy Gallo. Amy's a contributing editor at Harvard Business Review and an expert on dealing with workplace conflict. She actually wrote the HBR guide to dealing with conflict at work. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Joe.
So you've spent a lot of time thinking about how people can manage these inevitable conflicts that crop up all the time at work, whether that's in the office or online. What do you wish more people knew about conflict?
I wish more people were comfortable with conflict and were willing to embrace it. And I really feel like we actually disagree far less than we should be at work, particularly in a remote environment, because the costs are so high. It takes a lot more to stop a Zoom meeting or get your colleague on a call and say, you know what, I don't see eye to eye here. So in these remote environments, we tend to do very little quality disagreement, and I think we're losing a lot of opportunity because of that.
So you think people should be arguing more with each other?
I do. I really do. I know that sounds horrible, but I do think there's healthy conflict. Of course, there's dysfunctional, unhealthy disagreement, but healthy conflict has so many benefits for organizations, for teams, for people. Better work outcomes, more innovation. We get a chance to grow and develop ourselves. We have stronger relationships if we are willing to say what we actually think, work through disagreements together, and then get out on the other side. There's a whole host of benefits that come along with doing that in a productive professional way.
So give us an example of what healthy conflict might look like in an online environment. So many people now are taking their work online, are having their business transformed to virtual encounters. What's an example of conflict that you've seen come up, and how could that be expressed in a healthier way?
Yeah, I think one of the most common things I have observed is these Zoom meetings where you have 5, 6, 8 people, all the little squares on your screen. Brady Bunch style, exactly. And people are discussing how should we push this project forward, or what's a new idea we want to put forward. And people start to coalesce around an idea. And then you start to see that some people disengage. Either they have uncomfortable looks on their faces, they're just quiet, whatever it is that they have a difference of opinion, but aren't sure how to express it. And that's an example. I think more often than having unhealthy conflicts, we often don't even have the conflict in these environments. So how that would look is, someone just quietly raising their hand and saying, can I play devil's advocate here? Or I see we're converging on an agreement, but I see it a little bit differently. Or I have a difference of opinion. Would you be willing to hear me out here? Right? And just raising, this seems like normal, inevitable sort of practice in organizations, that you would be willing to say what you think, but so few people, because of our natural instincts around wanting to be liked, feeling like conflict is a bit of a threat, right? All of those natural instincts prevent us from having some of these most important conversations.
Where do you think the burden lies? Is it on leaders to encourage this kind of healthy debate? Or should people try to push themselves to become a little more open to the idea of disagreeing agreeably with others?
Yeah. It's both. I would never tell someone, get comfortable with disagreement if your career or your job is going to suffer as a result. So if you have a manager who absolutely does not want to hear a difference of an opinion, and there's going to be repercussions for doing so, telling that person to get comfortable with speaking up is not going to help them, right? Managers have a real role to play to create an environment where dissent, debate is allowed, right? That's the psychological safety that Amy Edmondson talks about. Just creating an environment where people are comfortable with debating ideas, and that really does rely on the manager. At the same time, that's the manager's work, and we all have to get better, more comfortable with being willing to speak up and willing to disagree with someone. I think because of the way our political environment is, the way that we are spending so much time with smaller circles and circles of people, is that we really are comfortable being around people who agree with us. So many times it's become, equivalent saying I don't agree is the same as saying you're an idiot. And we really have to move away from that equivalence, because disagreement sometimes is actually the kindest thing you can do. And as long as you do it with empathy and compassion, being straightforward and upfront with someone about how you feel, particularly around work or a goal you're working toward, is a really kind thing to do. There's nothing mean about it.
You alluded earlier to some of the benefits that workplaces could witness if they adopt this kind of approach and more people feel comfortable engaging in healthy debate. What are some of those benefits that you've observed, and how can people get better at doing that?
Yeah. So the one of the most important is innovation. So Linda Hill at Harvard Business School calls this creative friction. So when you see a project or an idea one way, I see it a different way. We have to lay out our assumptions, build an argument for why it should go our way or a different way. Together, we are coming up with a better idea than either of us would have done individually, or either of us would have done if the other just gave in, right? So that creative friction is important. That's one of the key benefits. The other benefit that I personally have seen is just really stronger relationships. I like to work with people who I know I can disagree with, and it's going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
It's not. I don't want to have to walk on eggshells around my colleagues. So in order to do that, one of the things we really have to do is put down our natural instinct to be liked, and really focus on, this is not a popularity contest. This is really about what are the best ideas, what's best for the organization. Now, that's not an excuse to be a jerk to your colleagues. You still should be kind and empathetic and all compassionate. But you can also be direct and honest. Those things are not at odds.
Mm-hmm. So it's moving it away from personality conflicts and moving it into the realm of really just productivity and performance and projects. It's not
Well,
personal.
yeah, it's not personal. I mean, it is. All work is personal, but you're debating ideas. You're collaborating together. It's not about you versus the other person. It's you and the other person solving a problem together. Now, I don't want to gloss over the fact that there are interpersonal conflicts, and sometimes this is very personal. It's about, people are disrespecting one another at work, and that's a different situation that has to be handled directly as well. But in that sense, there is more, personal meaning at stake, and we really have to navigate that a little bit differently.
First step is to identify the kind of conflict you're experiencing, I suppose, and then from there to work through it together appropriately, making sure all the while to kind of shift the balance of attention to the projects and the work and the ideas rather than the people and the personalities involved.
That's exactly right. Yep. You got to, first step, like you said, know what you're disagreeing about. Really, really figure out, is this a disagreement over the task we're taking on, the process to achieve that goal, or is this about, something between us, between, our personalities or the way we're interacting, or is this about status? Is this about who gets to make the call? Once you know what you're disagreeing about, it's going to be much easier to solve it. And you might be disagreeing about all of that stuff, right? It might be a hot mess of many types of conflicts, but if you can thread each piece of it out, you can take them one by one.
Great advice. I'm going to start practicing this right now. Thank you so much, Amy, for sharing your wish today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Joe.